In the 16 years I've spent teaching the guitar, I've seen beginners get stuck over and over again when they try to copy other players. I'm Jake, and in this video, I'm going to break down the phases of learning guitar: beginner, intermediate, advanced, and pro. That way you can see where you are and ways you can grow. We'll talk about what each level means, how to know you're ready for the next one, and some tips. Before we dive into talking about the beginner phase, I think it's important to talk about my philosophy of the levels. A lot of people try to write out, these are the techniques you should know as a beginner or an advanced player or late intermediate or early beginner. I don't think that's the best way to look at it. Some people start learning hammer-ons and pull-offs very early. Other people don't learn them until much later. It depends on what you need for the styles of music you play. To say somebody is not an advanced player because they can't play a particular style of music seems to miss the point entirely. Let's start with the beginner phase. In this phase, your goal is to learn a handful of songs, somewhere between 3, 5, 10, maybe even 15, all within about the first 5 frets of the neck. The reason that we want to spend our time down here is because all the chords that we learn here end up applying up the neck as we move forward into later stages. Also, when we say we play guitar, we want to be able to pick it up and we want to be able to strum something people recognize and can sing along with. At least that's something that I've always wanted to do, and most of my students. Now, some people I know that are professional musicians have never left what I would consider the late beginner stage. They can play really well. They can strum, maybe fingerpick. They can play tons of songs. They even write music, but they're not playing any lead guitar. They're solid rhythm players. They're playing back in the low part of the neck. They're playing open chords, and maybe they're using them unbelievably well. But I would still consider that a late beginner phase. The next phase is intermediate. And in the intermediate phase, we're looking at learning the neck, knowing that this note is C, and this note is C, and this note is C, and this note is C. And being able to find those quickly and confidently. And not just for C, but also G sharp and E flat. We want to be able to play and name every note quickly and confidently. Not just to be able to play the notes or name them, but also to string those together to make chords and scales. I think for most guitar players, this is going to encompass learning major and minor pentatonic and being able to play it all over the neck in different keys. And while that sounds really tricky and complicated, the beautiful part of guitar over most other instruments is there's patterns that repeat. So if we learn a small handful of scales, we can turn that in to knowing pretty much every scale with a little bit of work. Talking about an advanced player brings to mind somebody who has a lot of vocabulary. And when I say vocabulary, I mean things they can play on guitar, whether it's chord voicings, single note lines, or licks. The idea is that they've learned a lot of songs and solos and licks and riffs using the knowledge they learned as a beginner and an intermediate player to start knowing how to play more styles or different variations of a style that they're maybe becoming an expert in. They don't just play 1 or 2 blues songs, they can play 20. Then when they hear something new or different that's connected, say a rock song or a pop song that's using that style, they're able to quickly identify what they're hearing and learn it. And that happens because they recognize more and more and more of what's happening and what's common in most songs. Let's talk about the last level, pro or expert. I hear a lot of people talk about the pro level or professional level of guitar playing, but I don't think that's the best label. Because being a professional just means somebody pays you to do it. And I know dozens of musicians who I would consider late beginning guitar players who are expert singers who are making a living. They are professional guitar players. People are paying them to play guitar. But I wouldn't consider them an expert. So what makes an expert? An expert is somebody that has developed their own personal style. When you hear them play, you recognize it as their playing. Now, we're all chasing that, and it takes a long time to develop it. And truth be told, we're always developing it. But I think most players who become experts turn a corner where they stop usually sounding like other people and they begin to play like only they can. And wherever you are in your guitar journey, whether you're a beginning player, an intermediate player, whether you're advancing, you can join me for free at skool.com/guitar in my free course and community for guitar players. Join over 1,000 other players who are making progress together, sharing the wins and the difficulties of being a guitarist. I'll leave a link in the description and I will see you inside.